you know, contracts basically. Anyway, so okay, I see that. Okay, my bad. So again, the topic is would you allow another to choose your spouse? So the topic is arranged marriage. I'm just gonna read what we wrote about as far as background. So arranged marriages are an ancient and relatively common act in cultures outside of the US. But is it possible to enter in such an agreement in today's time? Would you allow another person to select your spouse? Why or why not? And with nearly 50% of marriages ending in divorce, this is just nationwide, not necessarily our community. Is this a viable solution to stemming the decay of the Black family? So we always try to spark solutions on Love Language, the roundtable. We don't want to just talk about what's wrong without trying to discuss possible solutions with an S. So nothing that we say is for everybody, but things should be, especially as we but I don't know how to, I guess in my lifetime I've seen us become more aware of Torah.
Right.
Not that it hasn't been around, but we've become more aware of it and just trying to go back the other way. At one point, when things are so bad, we should stop and turn around and find out,
right.
you know,
right.
what do we do? How did we get here? Literally, how did we get here and have those conversations? So real quick before we jump into the nitty gritty of the subject, the topic made me do more research. So I appreciate how we collaborate on topics because I'm constantly learning. And I found an article the other day. There was just one person talking, but this guy was from India. And I guess, I'm not sure what part of India he was from, but he was saying that the divorce rate in India, I guess the country, I'm not sure, I don't want to stereotype, but he said the divorce rate with arranged marriages in India is 1%, which is, that alone, and like if you're a math person, that alone should pique your interest. So what struck my attention about the article was that he was talking about how, you know, people in the Western culture don't necessarily look at it as an option. However, he pointed out that something like online dating is an example of that. Now, I'm not sure if that's true, but that was interesting to me in that sometimes we allow people to pick our, not necessarily spouses, but the people we're interested in. So for people who go and do online dating, they're still putting in information that tells who they are, and the system, through algorithm would then say, okay, well, this person is probably who you should be checking for. So it's not that foreign of a concept, even in today's time where there is a lot of blurred lines between what's right and what's wrong. That the initial idea of linking up with somebody that shares common things with you is common, even in this society. So so that's that. And then I was trying to think what else. So matchmaking. So do we even think that's even possible? I know, Zebulon, you was talking about having people around, and I think what you said as far as community, how I translate that is just accountability. So, you know, we could try to implement like arranged marriages, but do we even feel like that's even appropriate? So I guess the first question that we could just throw out there is it even possible to have somebody else inform who you marry? Like, is that even a thought process that so-called Black people would even be down for? And then if not, why not? Like, what might be a stumbling block to that thought? So.
All right. So, excuse me. You made some real interesting points. And this is kind of one of those things that I've even, like, as leading up to this conversation, I was kind of, you know, on a seesaw effect with, like, going back and forth within myself. I'm just trying to do a little bit of study and understanding. Can you guys hear me? Am I? Okay. Study and understanding on the fact. I just wanted to add something just to throw some more numbers out there. Although we know numbers can be skewed, and there's a whole bunch of different variables that we have to look at to kind of get the whole matter in this right perspective. But globally speaking, according to some census that I've seen, the divorce rate of arranged marriages globally it's only about you could 6.3%, and that could be an indicator of success. But we also have to see what these cultures that implement them feel about divorce itself, or some of the other parameters that,
very good point,
as far as living arrangements and those type of things, happen within marriage as well. So um, that seems like a good starting point, but then there's a whole bunch of stuff we have to dive into. Um, as far as it seems pretty successful. As far as fitting out the cultures that are demonstrated in America and its appropriateness, I think that would depend on the person and how close knitted their community is. For example, Brother Zeb, you talked about earlier how other nations in their communities kind of pick areas to live, and they kind of build upon their own culture first, and then judge or use a funneling effect to figure out what they want from other people as far as culturally or any other influences outside of their cultural nucleus. Um, dare I say, this was something that was done, let's say pre-segregation with Black communities, meaning there was a lot more involvement community-wise with individual families. Now we kind of see the reverse effect happen, whereas in this kind of a fend for yourself nature. Um, well, I don't think this shows to get into the politics of why that happened and the reason. So I'm not going to go there. But what I'm seeing with arranged marriages, which makes them successful, or adds to that success rate, is that close knit community aspect and family. I look at my family. I'm kind of, I can see how it could work for other people, but using myself as that, would that work in your life? I want to say no, because there's a strong sense of individuality, and especially looking at my family. My the elders in my family and some of the younger people in my family. We all have this I'ma love you from a distance aspect going on. You know what I mean? Whereas even with, I say, like my grandmother or something like that, our ideals on what we consider to be happiness and peace are vastly different. And in some cases, we are able to kind of find some common ground. But in most cases, it's like your school of thought or your way of thinking and my way of thinking are, totally apart. So it's hard to see her saying, I think this woman would be suitable. But I'm going to give you the flip side. And Tamar, you spoke on dating and online dating, and as you were speaking, this popped in my head because I know we kind of talked about it before, as far as the connection between online dating and arranged marriages, and that article had made. So looking at it, with our boys, our friends, women and men do it alike. We use the opinion of others to find out if that person is suitable or not.
Exactly. Yeah.
For example, you sitting with your boys and you like, hey, yo, I like such and such. And your boy be like, nah, man, X, Y, and Z, whatever that could be, whether he dealt with her beforehand or whether he knew stories of other people who dealt with her or whatever the case may have been. You hear that. I give a perfect example. When I was younger, and this is probably wow. When I was younger, let's say like my freshman year of high school or something like that, maybe my sophomore year, I dated the young lady, and I was interested in the young lady, and the interest was mutual. But I talked to a friend of mine. I didn't really date her, but we were interested in each other. I talked to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Don't do it, bro. Don't do it." And I heard his reasons why, and based upon his reasons, I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Whether that was a good or bad is a different story. But the point is, we listen to other people when it comes to deciding factors of who we're going to be with and why we're going to be with them. Sometimes we go with it, sometimes we don't, but we at least take that consideration in. So, whereas in that, looking at my grandmother as not being a suitable option, I think in order to find this appropriateness, we would have to have the determining factor of who's doing the choosing, or who's saying that person is suitable, and how much do they know you.
Right.
I'm gonna let anyone else chime in on that before I go to the next point. My next point.
You can hit your next point, Aki.
Okay, cool. So in conjunction with that, it's an importance. I was just laying down the fact of it being importance, and the people who are making this choice, kind of knowing you. We talked about on this show as far as when it comes to relationships. We I don't want to say explicitly speak on relationships between two people who aren't in family, but I'm going to use this point to kind of drive in that relationship factor being any two individuals. That it could be family members or what. It doesn't only have to be in levels of intimacy. So what I will say is on this show we talked about being naked, if you will, or presenting ourselves naked to one another. And Torah speaking, that's kind of how the community was, or that's how communities were presented themselves to be back in those days. It was, confessing your sins one to another, and taking fault in what you've done wrong to bring before the priest or whatever, and everybody kind of being aware of what's going on within the community. Right. So you have to kind of present yourself at face value. We look at a person like David doing that very thing when other people were kind of ridiculing him about his actions that he made, and he's like, don't go and kill him, let him live, because
Right.
of this is the least amount of his punishment. So with that being said, coming into relationships with other people, whether it be families or these elders or whoever makes this choice of, I think you should date this person, or I think you should go with this person, or I think you should enter a courtship with this person, you would have to have already presented yourself naked to them so they know your ins and your outs. And sometimes I'm looking and it's like those connections are better made, not with the people who you're birthed into, but those who you choose. They say your friends are your family members that you choose. So just a reflection on that. Y'all can kind of chime in and take in that direction. I just wanted to throw that out
there. Excellent points.
Yeah. I would say too, just some I forgot to mention too. We talked about arranged marriages rather, and in the example I gave, as far as in India, wherever part of India he was at, the average age for that type of arrangement was 18 for women and 22 for men. So they were young before they had the opportunity to be tainted, by whatever. So, so when I used to go to class and fellowship or whatever, I would joke around with my friends. I'd be like, yeah, she's the same age as David, so what's up? You know what I'm saying? So we kind of still do stuff like that. Well, I've done those things. And I think that's that it's definitely possible. Like you said, Zebulon, in like really close knit or tight communities. But I wonder, just to your point, Isaiah, about who would be the one. I mean, typically it would be the elder. You know, you look in the book, and Isaac didn't know, never seen her before, never seen Rebecca before. It was like, you know, he didn't see who she was until she showed up. Like, hey,
Hey, Genesis 24.
but then when you read the end of it, I'm not sure how other translations go, but or any other commentary around it, but you know, it's basically like he saw her and he liked the way she looked, and then it said that he took her to be his wife, and after that he was comforted after the death of his mother. So it was obviously something about her, but before that it was just the directive from Abraham was just go to serve, just go ahead and you know, go to this particular area and pick somebody, and they were definitely relatives too. So there was a personality that or character that precedes them, their physical being, which I love that. I believe that our character should precede us. Like, you know, if you know about Tamar in the community, I would hope that you would say she's this or she's that. Not that I'm perfect, but I hope that would be what happens. But
Right.
so like, and so you know, for good or bad, if I was, you know, if people are ratchet, you kind of want to know, like, no, don't deal with this person because of X, Y, and Z. But
Right.
but who will we? But who will we pick though? Will we? Is there any understanding, Zebulon, that you have about age, or you know, like what makes somebody eligible to be the chooser? Because one last thing, there are people I know right now who are kind of scattered over the U.S., I think, who live in communities where they have an elder, and like a male, like what's the word? It's not matrilineal. What's the patriarchal?
Patriarchal, yeah.
They have a patriarchal system where the men in the community, and they not even blood as far as immediate blood, but they pick people. They do these things.
Right.
So I've seen people trying to do it in this day and time. But like I said, I don't know enough about it to say what not is good or not. But I'm not sure what your experience has been, Zebulon. If you ever seen it happen where a marriage was arranged, and I wonder who the person was that picked them, and then also what have been the stories about what's happened, the success, like people that you met personally.
Well, I've only known, I can't really count that person, but definitely two couples that I know that were arranged from their youth up. And and of course, this is only a testimony based on what they've given me. I mean, I wasn't there to watch the the process or whatever have you, but from my and one of the couples, they grew up in Dimona, under Ben Ami's
Right.
you know, which people say what they want to say about them or whatever, but I think they are single-handedly the best examples of a lot of element of community that Israelites are probably going to see, because they actually did it. Like a lot of what we deal with is a lot of it is theory, is a lot of, and theory is good,
Right.
Theory, knowledge, all of that's good, but they've actually taken the theory and say, hey, through trials and tribulations, we now have the infrastructure.
That's
now
right.
we have the numbers to back up our theory. So one of the couples, they were from I think sister Torah, and her husband, he passed away a couple years ago, but when she was giving me, because she's the one who actually sent me the book, the one we were talking about, I want for my sister what I want for myself.
Right.
She sent me the book, and that's how the conversation kind of evolved from there, and just saying that the only way that arranged marriages can actually work, and some people can argue this, but I see where she's coming from. She said that arranged marriages can only work outside of the American paradigm. That it cannot work within the confines of American society, not because of law or anything, but because of the culture, the dominant culture that's going to fight against what you're telling your daughter one thing, like, hey, listen, this is how we're going to do whatever, but Love and Hip Hop is telling you something else.
Right.
And you end up kind of having to match wits with the writers of Love and Hip Hop because they're on consistently. So now your narrative has to supersede their narrative. So if they're coming hard, every night on BET, you got to come twice as hard every night just to counter the effects of it. And sometimes even that doesn't work. Whatever like that. So what she was saying is that she said it can be done in America, but to what degree of success is a whole nother argument. Just like polygamy can be done here. I mean, it can be done, and I know a lot of people who have made it, who are actually making it work, but they're fighting against a beast that is known to destroy such situations. So again, a lot of it, and I to a large degree, I agree with the sister when she was like, a lot of the things that we as a people, we have to put ourselves in geopolitical positions to control our communal understandings, our communal directives, what it is that we're trying to do, because unless we control it, someone else will control it, and they will dictate how this is going to happen. Or you'll hear people come in and be like, oh, arranged marriage, oh, that's not, and immediately will shoot it down before they give you, well, what are the merits of it? And so for my position, one of the merits of arranged marriages is we have to consider the fact that we've been agreeing with arranged marriages all this time and just haven't really realized it. Because essentially, when a mother, especially with mothers and sons, when a woman has a son, she already has in her mind the kind of woman that she desires her son to be with.
I know I do.
Right. A woman doesn't want no slipshod dude.
Right.
I mean, slipshod, woman with her son.
Right.
And she's going to check this guy, what do you got going on? Where does he work? She wants to know as Mary would say, she wants to know the 411 on
right.
on this cat. Like, what are you doing? And it's the same thing with a father and a daughter, especially with fathers and daughters. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to chin check the dude immediately.
I know you are.
Because you're not just going to, because not just because of the physical issue of, is he going to put his hands on my daughter, but because what is he bringing to the table? What is his belief systems? Where's his ethics? What is his position on Israelite culture? All of these things have to play a major role before there is any type of serious conversation between him and my daughter immediately. So what we've been doing, like we've always been doing in this kingdom, is we've been employing Deuteronomy 28:29, chapter 28, verse 29, where it says that you will grope at noonday as the blind gropes in the dark. So just like a person groping at noonday, the light is in front of them, the answer's there, but we can't see it. We're just like this, kind of trying to figure things out and not really knowing how to activate these things. So we've been doing these things. We've been understanding and accepting the idea of arranged marriages. We just haven't gone all the way with it and say, you know what? Let's not dance around this. Let's, get the right person for my daughter and the right person, whatever. But unfortunately, we have communities, and I'm not talking about the Israelite community, but just the African American communities. There's absolutely no monolithic elements of ethics involved in our communities. Like, no black person agrees on anything. Except, well, we agree on ignorance, but we don't agree on anything else. We'll agree on ignorance, but anything that has to do with ethics and things, there's no agreement. So it's hard to say that you'll give your daughter or your son to this person because you already don't know what this family is involved in, whatever like that. You don't really know. Now, Israelite communities in the 1950s and the 60s, what they would do, they had exactly what we were talking about. They had insulated communities. Because, you know, in those days, especially in this, you know, all the way into the 70s, Israelites, you know, and then formerly known as Black Jews, but Israelites, they were of the same sentiment of, no, what we're going to do is we're going to buy this brownstone, that brownstone, this brownstone, whatever, and we're going to literally create communities. And you and your husband, I don't know your marriage status, but you know, but just anybody, you and your husband is friends with me and my wife. We've been friends for 20 years or whatever whatever amount of time, whatever. You had children around the same time we had children. Our children are growing up together. They know each other as friends and playmates or whatever the case. We both have the same ethics. We may have differing ways of expressing the culture of those ethics, but we still have the same ethics. What are our ethics? That Torah. We have the same ethics. So I know that as they get older, I know the manner of person that you and your husband are. I know you because, listen, we keep Shabbat together. We study together. We do all of these big, great things together. I know the manner of persons that you are. So I know how your child is being raised. I know your daughter's ethics. You know my son's ethics. Because, again, we're studying together. We all have the same platform. So naturally, if I say, listen, you know, listen, Sister Tamar, my son Zakai, I think he's, you know, I think it would be very, not only good for them, but profitable for our families if we were to introduce my son to your daughter. Why? Of course, it brings the families together. You know, one clan with another clan, we now have a family, and we're able now to build. You don't have to worry about what he's doing with your daughter because we already know what they've been doing because the ethics there. We've raised up our children from birth to 18 and inside of a community of other believers, of other people with the same ethics. So no matter where they go in that community, they're getting the same food.
Right.
As Elijah Muhammad used to say back in the days, it was like, you know, that one of the problems was that we feed, you know what I'm saying, they feed our babies the wrong foods. But we're feeding them the right foods. So you live in a community in which everybody is Torah-based. Now, what goes on after the Torah is whatever, and even that's not that much of an issue, but the ethics are the same. We all have Torah ethics. We do believe in keeping the laws. We keep these Shabbats. We keep these new moons. We keep Leviticus 11. All of the basics are there. So why would I have any apprehension about introducing my son or saying, hey, listen, I think my son and your daughter need to eventually join together and bring our families together, join the clan of Tamar or the clan of Isaiah with the clan of Zebulon, and we now have this massive family. And that's how arranged marriages, I mean, and I know I can get long-winded sometimes, but just even when we go back to that example that we used previously about coming to America. And even though we get kind of thrown off by the comedic value of coming to America and the whole, you know, with homegirl, I forget her name, Imani.
Yeah.
And she's like, whatever you like.
Right.
And of course, that's for the comedic value, the sensationalism. But if you listen to the narrative behind the comedy, the narrative is excellent because what the king is saying, listen, he said, we went through a lot to pick the perfect, you know what I'm saying, to pick the perfect bride for you. And she says that I've been raised, she was like, I've been raised to be the wife of a king.
Yeah, right.
And so here you have one royal family, because obviously her father wasn't no side street dude. He clearly was a man of prominence. Here he is. He raised his daughter to be royalty. So all of her ethics is royalty based. Same thing with Akeem. So if she's being raised up to be the, to be the wife of Akeem, and Akeem is being raised up to understand that, yes, you're going to have, there's a woman or whatever that's going to come in and whatever. It was the same thing with the king and the queen, where she was like, hey, when I first met your father, I was scared. So all of these things are all, these elements are already there. We've been acknowledging, the great elements of it and how it can work. The only point in time where it may not work is in communities that already have dysfunction. And when you look at the African American paradigm, it's severe dysfunction. I mean, there's dysfunction amongst the Israelite community generally, and I'm using that term very loosely.
Right.
There's even some dysfunction amongst us, and we are the beholders of the Torah. So imagine what you're sending your children into in the African American community at large. You're setting them up for divorce. You're setting them up for alimony. You're setting them up for baby fathers and baby mamas. You're setting them up for all of this drama because there's no ethics there. So again, going back to what the sister said, she said that it can work, that arranged marriages can work, but she doesn't believe it can work in the westernized American paradigm because the system itself was built. Well, this is where I'm adding to it, that the system itself was built for confusion. It's built with the concept of deception, confusion, and just general failure. I mean, it's not a coincidence that marriage as an institution is laughable. This is the reason why you can go get married within 10 minutes at Las Vegas. There's a reason why marriage is so easy to get involved with in this country, because it's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to Las Vegas, 10 minutes, and go get Elvis to marry you. So, I mean, such a thing in the scriptures would be blasphemy.
Right.
So that's my my rant.
Go ahead, Isaiah.
Oh, okay. That was funny. Go get married by Elvis.
Yeah, I mean,
I believe in some cases you could even get married by fictional characters like Barney. But
yes,
you made a lot of points, and
that usually happens when you rant.
You had me thinking about a lot of different things. So I'm gonna try to push through some of these, and I want to start with what you said about the destruction of community, ethics and morals that we see within the American culture. So it's funny because y'all studying psychology and at the school I went to, there was a few different things that we talked about. And politics, we of course I had to take some politic courses or whatnot. We also took I also took a course that kind of talked about I guess being culturally in tune with the different cultures that are in this society. And in order to have that utilitarian ideal, it was things about each culture that they had to kind of drop to kind of build forth an ideal of unity, if you will. I'm noticed about our governing system, although the aim is try to please the most people, there are nuances within certain cultural heritage and things of that nature that have to be kind of removed or dropped in order to find yourself liked by other groups. they tried to say this is a melting pot, but the ideal behind a melting pot would be everybody actually achieving the process of coming together. And as you said, as far as America is concerned, its overall culture is built on confusion. It's not built to necessarily come together with cohesiveness. Maybe be in the same vicinity of each other, but at that same time, that mixing becomes hard because a lot of people have to kind of drop some things that they find important. So when looking at relationships, you kind of see the same thing. I wanted to talk about forming a community because that's we talk about it a lot on this show, but we don't really dive that deep into it. So I was looking at some key features behind cultural relevance and the things needed to become a community, right? Say, I am this nationality, or this is who I am, and for it to be recognized by the government.
Right.
So some of the key things would be, and these are things that you talked about as far as achieving that aspect of having an arranged marriage, or having an elder or someone, a matriarch, I believe, having someone above you say, this is what I think would work for you. And as far as when we get to the solutions portion, I think that's kind of where my ideal of a solution is going to lead to. But some of the key things that you need is an agreement as far as a collective, an agreement on traditions and customs, and that's include rules, behaviors, written things of that nature to kind of say this is how we're governed, right? Religion is another big aspect. Language is another big aspect.
Yes, sir.
So, you would say in order to quote unquote be an American, ideally we speak English, right? Or a form of English.
Something.
Right. And we have not necessarily an ideal religion because there's so many different ones in this country, but we have an ideal, let's say, kind of function of religion. So in order to be an American citizen, your religion has to have, as far as its major portion, it has to have an acceptance for others. But I'm not really looking at it as being an American, but this is what it means to be a quote unquote nation, or quote unquote have an identity within
Right.
This place. To have a social organization, whether those be classes, music, those type of things. Socially, this is what we agree upon. A family nucleus, this is socially how we think families should be built. Different patterns. Um, art and literature. Again, I talked on like books and things of that nature. Historical documents, those things that and even art pieces, what we define as beauty, those things have to be recognized within that community, right? So these are all building pieces when we look at the so-called Black culture or Afro-American culture here. We're missing elements of that, and it's the failure to communicate what those missing pieces are, which kind of drives us all over the place, which makes us attempt to kind of assimilate with other cultures and identities, and be pulled away from hanging out with each other. You know what I mean? Not to say, not to be so much as strong as being like a Black nationalist or something like that, but just understanding that there are pieces of things that we choose to try to identify with that pull us away, which in result would ultimately be a hindrance of arranged marriages. I was about to say a marriage. Wow. But looking at you started talking about the pros. We started talking about pros of arranged marriages. I kind of want to specify something that I think would be a major plus, and this is kind of something that we talked about, on other shows,
Right.
as well, which would be the emphasis on removing emotion out of a relationship.
Hmm.
A lot of times, with relationships, we go in not necessarily. We talked about this a few weeks ago, rather. Not necessarily what is good for, the relationship, or what is good for that individual making that decision.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of times when that doesn't happen, there's emotion that becomes affected, and people begin to move based off of their emotions. With arranged marriages, you kind of remove that aspect of it, so it's not, you already going into the relationship with what's going to help us both succeed. And that's probably is one of the reasons why there's such a low divorce rate. Could attribute to one of the reasons why there's such a low divorce rate within relationships of that magnitude being arranged marriages. So there's a slight difference in reaction to how you deal with problems or whatnot, because you are already understood or designed to say, this is the person that I'm going to be with, right? And we have to make it work. So I don't know. I would have to look into the different cultures, and maybe that's something that Zeb, you can kind of touch more on, because you probably have the most knowledge of these things happening and working. The cultural aspect of different nationalities that approve arranged marriages, and that ideal of, do they instill that ability of making it work, are coming together to make decisions based on what's best for that grouping versus what's best for a particular person? Or do they look more so like at the long-term effects behind their decisions, and not necessarily for romantic reasons? So I guess that was kind of a statement and the question all in one. But the ideal,
Yeah.
is that like an ideal behind arranged marriages, removing the romantic aspect behind it and seeing how does it work as far as cohesiveness.
Okay. Before I even say anything, I wanted to obviously give Sister Tamar the platform to lay something out as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would just want to add to what y'all was saying about when I was mentioning the article earlier, the guy used the language. He distinguished arranged marriage from what was called love marriage. And I had never heard anybody call, and I was like, what is that? But I was like, okay, that's what we do over here. We like, I love you, therefore.
Right, therefore.
Right. And so I would like to, delve into that, because that was kind of one of the questions too, the topics too, that you brought up, and maybe it fits in this conversation. I don't know. But yeah, like what part? Because that's often, I think, what people, that's the pushback they say to arranged marriage. They're like, well, how am I just gonna meet somebody? I don't, like I said, we said earlier with Rebecca and Isaac, they didn't love each other. And you could say the same thing. I mean, love as far as how we would in this time identify love. I mean, I think he probably thought she was physically attractive, but I mean, love is, and then even the concept of love differs according to who you talk to, like, which is confusion. That's confusion too. But also, so I'll let us talk about that. The other thing I wanted to say real quick about the cultural aspect is, Torah is the foundation. Like, I feel like the Torah gives you, I hate to use the word religion, I don't know what else to use, but it gives you religion, it gives you government, it gives you it gives you justice, it gives you guidelines, not necessarily for everything, because I know we talked about it before that, you know, like if I was married, my household would look different from somebody else's household because, you know, we get a little bit of what to do and what not to do, but, you know, whether or not we all vegetarians or not is really it's my husband, you know what I'm saying? Between me and him, we go decide what's best for our household. So we don't get every walk-in order in the Torah, but you get a foundation by which you can thrive. And I think that's the problems that we don't want to be self-governed, not even self-governed, let alone governed by somebody else. We don't even want to restrain our thoughts because all the actions and stuff comes from thoughts. So we don't even want to sit still enough to be trained, whether we decide to do it in our household, do it outside. So I think a lot of it is that. I mean, I think I try to tell everybody that's a solution to everything. Everything you whining about reparations and, you know, if somebody stole your car, you want them to go to jail. I mean, what's the difference between that and like you looking at the Torah and, you know, if I take your stuff, I'm supposed to give it back to you with some interest. Like, what's the difference? But we don't look at it like that. We look at it as a bunch of rules, but we got rules that this government has put into place. And so even the other day I was thinking about this. We have, I guess, the traditional churches have taken away the law, but then now the law is the things of the Torah, I would even say, if I can say that. Now that the government does that. So if I was out here struggling, then I get welfare. I mean, but that's the same concept that's in the law. But we don't want the law. Like the other day, I'm gonna give a perfect example, real quick example, and I'm gonna stop talking about this. But there was a conversation on the radio, and the people was like, you know, is self-care biblical? You know, let's just say I had an ailing parent and I was taking care of my parent. Is it okay for me to stop being a servant, at least at this moment, and take care of myself? And it got me to thinking, I'm like, that's what you have the Sabbath for. You know what I'm saying? But we don't acknowledge the Sabbath as rest. So now it's this big, long 2-hour conversation about whether or not I could take a nap or rest when he already told us how to be. So my irritation is always with that. Like we trying to rationalize and have these long conversations like Mars Hill, like go on and on about you know, as opposed to just going back to the basics. So that's all I want to say on that. But I did want to revisit again the idea of a love marriage versus an arranged marriage, and basically, how do you deal with emotions? Like you brought that up, Isaiah. So how do we deal with emotions? Or that idea of love when it comes to something, to a relationship where you didn't choose the person, somebody chose them for you. So.
Right. Well, y'all kind of brought up quite a few points. But this is good stuff. I mean, this is good stuff. I mean, let's start with I'm just looking at my notes here that I was taking while y'all were both speaking. Let's take, for instance, well, let me just first address the issue of divorce. The divorce rate. The brother brought up the divorce rate among, you know, in these arranged marriage scenarios, and of course, naturally, the numbers are going to be a little skewed because there's other things that have to be taken into consideration with these numbers. And like the brother said, what is the position on these people's position on divorce? So, for instance, in many Islamic societies, the divorce rate is extremely low. I mean, probably not even 1%. Now, on the surface, that's like, wow, that's great. Well, when you consider the fact that generally speaking, women are property, and I don't mean property in the biblical sense, I mean property in the sense of, you know, like, all right, I have my car, I have my couch, I have my wife, that kind of property, where you're just furniture.
Right.
You know, you're not even a person. So in those kind of scenarios where the woman doesn't even have rights in the scenario, then it's real easy to have a very low divorce rate because she doesn't have the rights to get a divorce. And let me not say Islamic, because not all Islam doesn't necessarily agree with some of the practices that Arabs generally do, but in those particular cultures, again, you know, if the man gets tired of the woman as a wife, he can relegate her to the level of a concubine and just say, well, you know what? You're just going to be my bed wench.
Wow.
Why? Because I don't like your damn mouth. You talk too damn much. You're cooking, a little suspect. So you're not on the wife level. You know what I'm saying? You are now a concubine. You're just there when I can't, you know, my other 4 wives they might be on their menstruation, so I can't approach them, so you're going to be my bed wench.
Right.
So when you have a situation like that, it's like, yeah, it's real easy to have very low numbers of divorce, because why does the man want to divorce you? It's like, hey, you're a bed wench. Why would I want you to leave? So those type of scenarios, I think in order to get a fair assessment of the numbers, you have to look at social groups, and it's, you know, something that obviously brother Isaiah knows about this when when you deal with psychology and just dealing with socio-political platforms. When you go to these social groups, the first thing that you have to find out is, number one, what position does the woman hold in that society? If she's property, then automatically the numbers have to be thrown out, because she doesn't have the say so to say, okay, yeah, you're, as a husband, you're trash. You're not satisfying me. I want out. She doesn't have that right.
As though she calls him trash. That's too funny.
No, he's trash. Whatever the case.
Right,
hold on one second.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Do you understand me? All right now. So, in those type of scenarios, those numbers are automatically skewed, because if the woman doesn't have the right to say, hey, I don't want in this marriage anymore because I'm not property. I'm not a piece of trash. I'm not a bed wench. I'm a woman. I'm a wife. How you gonna, if she doesn't have the right to, to at least ask for a divorce, then those numbers are automatically skewed. You can't rely on them. Now you have to go to a community in which the women actually has a say so, to where now the numbers can be trusted, because they're not based on something that the man is setting up, like, yeah, my wife, she's happy, yeah, she's good, she doesn't want a divorce. Well, it's like, well, let me ask her. And believe it or not, this was actually what the sister Patricia Dixon did when she went to Damona to interview the sisters on these issues of divorce, marriage, polygamy, or whatever. And she was shocked to even find out that in many cases it was just like in the case of polygamy, the women are the one who chooses the man, chooses the second wife or the third wife, which is like, what? So in those type of social settings, you can now trust the numbers, because the man and the woman has equal footing as far as their say so, as far as what can be communicated about the marriage. Now, with that said, as far as the whole issue of the love marriage versus arranged marriage, I've seen a lot of people, they like you said, Tamar, a lot of people, their argument against arranged marriages is what? It's all based on, well, what if I don't love the person?
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. We haven't been doing that. I mean, when we have one night stands, do we love the person?
Wow, that's the way to kick him in the teeth, boy. You could ask him that question right back to him.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you clearly don't love, what I'm saying? You clearly don't love that man when you saw him in the club and he was buying out the bar and you got all hot and bothered and he scooped you up and took you, like Biggie said, take you to the telly, whatever like that, T-bone steak, cheese, eggs, all that good stuff. It was no problem. You didn't stop him and say, hey, wait a minute. Before we have this one night stand, do you love me? Or will you love me in the morning? You know what I'm saying? Like these questions are not asked. Why? Because, well, there's no need to ask them. It's a one night stand. It's whoredom. So you have to look at people. I think it goes back to what you said, Tamar. People have a problem with accountability. See, in whoredom, there's no accountability. I can make up the rules as I go along. I can say, oh, we don't have to love each other to have sex, but we have to love each other to get married. But wait a minute. I've already had sex with you. So what are we talking about marriage for? Clearly,
Yeah.
we've both been committing whoredom. You're clearly not going to walk down the aisle with a white dress on because you're not chaste. So what are you wearing white for? And so these are what's up, son? Shalom. What's that? What is that? What are you doing? What shape is that?
Gyro elongated square by pyramid.
Okay, gyro elongated square by pyramid. Very good.
Oh.
Make some more. Yeah, make some more.
Oh.
Yeah, he's looking for attention, but that's my little man.
That's sweet. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the lack of accountability, it's like we can make the rules up as we go along, but because we're making them up, we don't have to be held to them because they're my rules. So I don't have to be held to them. So the question is absolutely you can marry someone who you don't initially love. First of all, when you get with somebody, you don't get with somebody because you love them. You get with somebody because they're attractive.
Exactly.
That if you see a brother, if Sister Tamar, if you see a brother, whatever like that, who you're interested in, you're not like, oh, I'm interested in him because I love him. No, you're like, no. Kind of like what he's got going on in the facial situation. His pockets look kind of right. I know he's got this business going or whatever. You're looking at the things that makes a possible marriage workable. You're looking at all of the things because love is one of those things that I'm not downing love, but love is fickle. People fall in and out of love. People can love you and still hate you at the same time. I mean, think about it. Look at David's son and Tamar.
Right, exactly.
He loved his sister. He loved her, and then as soon as she was like, "Hey, brother, we can't do that," now he was like, "Oh, you filthy."
Yeah.
So just that quick,
yeah.
love goes to. So these type of things are very fickle. So one of the things that what made arranged marriages in ancient times work so good is that the marriages were based on things that were long lasting. Financial security, ethic, spiritual ethics. What is your social position in the land? Like someone like Abraham says, yeah, tells his servant, yeah, go over here and go find a wife for my son. Yeah, and tell him that Abraham ben Tarak.
Right.
So as soon as they hear that name, like, whoa,
yeah.
Oh, word?
Right.
Then you get a whole bunch of brothers trying to shovel daughters onto him. Like, yeah, whatever like that, because of the social positioning. So so of course, marriages were established on more firm and more concrete platforms with arranged marriages. With arranged marriages, the woman already knows what she's getting into. The only thing that comes into question for her is probably, okay, and not to be carnal, but what's he working with in the bed? Because that's the only X factor there. That's the only thing that can kind of go either way and whatever like that. Outside of that, you already know what he's working with monetarily. You know what he's working with from a social standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. All of these things are already laid out because you also have the family reputation. The reputation of families go a long way. So you already know as a woman, you're like, oh, the sons of Abraham are looking for wives? You already know that's a good look. Abraham's bread is super long. You know what I'm saying? His money's super long. His sons is going to be super long. Their money. I mean, so there's already, and not to make it sound like it's gold digging, but,
no, I got you, yeah.
But like Connie said, I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but
right.
She don't want no.
Right.
But and there's nothing wrong with that. There's an understanding that these things are more concrete and marriages last longer when the more concrete elements are firmly established. Love is very fleeting. They're very fleeting, and it's vice versa. Men with women and how women, their feelings towards men at times. These things are very fleeting, and when you marry only for love, that's good until some other issue arises. Let's say your husband falls on hard times and he can't secure work.
Yeah, then what?
Now, you now have to take love and wrestle it with finances.
Mm-hmm.
But because there's no ethics there, as soon as he can't provide, the first thing you're like is, sorry, broken, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's the first thing. Whereas if your ethics are already there, you take a Proverbs 31 woman, the ethics that are already there is like, oh wow, okay, my Lord is kind of jacked up right now. Okay, we're gonna work on that. But in the meantime, let me get out here and do what I've been doing, and let me hold the situation down while he fixes his crown.
Absolutely.
While he fixes that up, let me get out here and make these things happen. So that when the people, when they see him out in the gates, they're not like, oh man, look how twisted it is. He's like, oh yeah, the brother kind of fell on some hard times, but man, look at Geberit over there. Look at his wife over there laying that situation down. Hallelujah. And vice versa. If something, if the sister's not able to do her part, in the community, whatever, like, or in the family, whatever, she's like, well, okay, yeah, whatever, but I know my Lord, he has this. He's got that. But that can only work when there's ethics involved. When the ethics are solid, all of these things do not interfere with the marriage. They just simply shift the attention to other elements of the marriage, and it can still prosper. But when you have marriages set up in strictly love, that means anything else that arises in that marriage that's problematic, you start seeing the demise of the relationship immediately. Because in this country, we're not told to marry for real reasons. We're told to marry, why? Because we like this person. I'm in love with this person. It's like KRS-One, that song, Love's Gonna Get You. You know what I'm saying? I love this and I love that. And when everything is built on just that concept, nothing else is brought to the table. So when sickness comes upon you, you forget about that vow. Because why? You didn't get married for that part of the vow of through sickness and health. That's just the other part of it. That's just those lines that you skip through to get to the kissing, and then get to the honeymoon, and then get to the whatever. But through sickness and health. So if I'm jacked up, the marriage should not change. It should say, oh, okay, well, we're just gonna shift it a little bit. We're gonna shift the priorities and do what we got to do to get it back on track. Whatever, you adapt to the situation, but the marriage still remains solid. And the only way that can happen is if all of these other elements of ethics and morality and things are already laid out. So when you're in families that are arranging marriages like this, so you have a situation like Isaac where he doesn't know the manner of woman that's coming on that camel with his father's servant, and she doesn't know the manner of man, or she doesn't know who he is, but she knows the reputation. She knows the family pedigree. She's like, oh, that's a son of Abraham. Oh, yeah, I'm with that. Yes. Yeah, I'll take the nose rings and put all of that on. I'm out. Right. And there's no question about it. And it says that he comforted him after the death. And
yeah, beautiful.
Your son's mother, the mother dies. There's not a whole lot of comforting in that.
Yeah.
But for someone to be able to come along who he's never met,
yeah,
but still had these elements to comfort him in that, again, this goes back to ethics, because these women were being raised in their household. They were being raised to be wives. They were being raised to be queens. They're being raised to embody the term Geberit. This is what they're being built up to be. So when they come across their husband, they can come in and comfort and take the place of their mother, in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's power involved in that. But again, if you don't have, if these elements are not there in that type of an arrangement, you really don't know what you're getting. It's like you don't know who's coming willy-nilly on that camel. It's like, I don't know what's up with that. Mm-hmm. And so, I know I kind of went off into some other stuff, but just the element of that love marriage versus arranged marriage, and I think people tend to forget that just because it's arranged doesn't mean that there's no love there. Because number one, arranged can mean a bunch of different things. It can mean arrange it, let's say today, and then you get married next week. Or it could be, well, we arranged it since they were 10 years old. And now that they're 18, they've had 8 years to get to know each other. So it would be nothing for her and him to love each other. They already love each other just as friends, just as, you know, who they came up with. The love is already there. Now it's just a matter of, oh, okay, so you wanna just go ahead and get married and just fill all this up, you know, just go ahead and finish this whole process, because we already love each other. We already know each other. We're already friends. We've already been doing this together, and that, you know, obviously not sex and all that stuff, but we've been doing all of the things that friends do. We've been doing all of this great stuff already since we were, you know, children. There's nothing that you don't know about me, and there's nothing I don't know about you. So why don't we just go ahead and get this covenant popping and just unify our families? So I think the opponents of arranged marriages, I think what they're doing is they're manufacturing false narratives. They're manufacturing these narratives that assumes that there is no love involved in arranged marriages. They're making these assumptions that there's no love and that there's no previous knowledge, and then they put up these shows on these cable stations of these arranged marriages where you never, you know, you just meet these people randomly and you don't know their family backgrounds, you don't know anything. That's not arranged marriages according to how our ancestors did. That might be what the Europeans do, and if that's what they do, that's their business, that's their culture, and they should. I'm saying that's their culture, and they should, you know, by all means, practice your culture. But like Joshua said, as for me and my house, we do things differently. We don't do what the nations do. And you know, and you know, that's going to be the end of my rant on this issue.
Yeah, well said. Isaiah, did you want to jump in and say something?
Only if you didn't have any points to forego to that topic.
No.
Okay, cool. So, oh man, where do I start?
I'm sorry, because I know sometimes I get into this thing and
it's all
out.
good. It's
no,
all good.
It's good.
It's all good because you touched on a lot of what I was thinking when I was talking about the aspects of removing emotion out of the aspect of marriages or relationships in general, and kind of focusing on, you know, the more overarching point. And I like the fact that you made the point alluding to what happens if there's a significant issue, or the reason why I fell in love with you isn't there anymore. How do we move forward? Because ideally, I believe every proponent of this show is not for divorce first, which is kind of what the American culture, although the narration might not be that's kind of what people tend to lead towards. Well, I'm not liking this situation. It's time to stab out. Or I'm not feeling it no more, so it's time to make other arrangements or do other things. I have I think I have an ideal that kind of pushes the ideal of arranged marriages, or the different aspects of it with the American culture, or the what I've learned growing up in America. So the ideal, we always talk about changing the narrative, creating a new standard. I think that's what I'm leaning towards for a kind of culmination of both these different worlds and ideals. But I wanted to kind of talk on some of the differences in I guess arranged marriages where people might have gripe with I guess the number one thing would be that whole element of hello, my sister, the whole element of dating, and those who are involved not given that ability. But I'm guessing the start of arranged marriages, which people tend to overlook, would be that build an aspect of cultural culture, family, and ethics, which is kind of what you talked on, Zeb. So you kind of laid down the narrative on how to avoid that already. Um, so I mean, your soliloquy did a good job there at kind of painting a picture. Um, so that's kind of where I will leave it. I don't leave it off. The only thing that I would think of would be you know how like how you started off by stating the rights or aspect the woman has within that arranged marriage. A lot of times, at least from I only could go by outside portrayals of what I see or things that I've read and stuff I mentioned have been mentioned about arranged marriages would be that aspect of being depressed or any of those type of things, the mental health aspect. Um, I guess your way of avoiding that, and it's normally only felt as, or it's only expressed, as far as I know, by women, as far as women being, locked down or felt oppressed in the situation. And you kind of laid out what would be the alternative to that, would be looking at cultures and civilizations where that woman has either the same or just as or equal rights as a man would have moving within that society. So for those who are in disagreements of arranged marriages would be to ideally look at your culture and see how does it feel to that opposite sex in general, whether you're a male and you're against it, or you're a woman and you disagree with it. What role or what roles, what gender roles, here we go with that one again, what gender roles are portrayed throughout your culture? And if there's a change that need to be made, how do you do that collectively? Um, so yeah, you pretty much touched all the bases that I can think of at the moment. Tamar, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just to the just to the example of Isaac and Rebecca. When I read it, I see that she had a choice. So it wasn't like, she just, came up on them and scooped her or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, and I guess it would depend, because you have you have other examples, and then you wonder about that. But I think that is what a lot of people kind of feel worried about, is that arranged marriages could be perceived as being oppressive. But that would, I don't know. I mean, those are conversations, or as far as solutions are concerned, that takes it's a collective thing. It's not kind
So
of the generation right now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
so I have a question. Are we moving into solutions?
yes, yeah, we can go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this is kind of what I wanna state, and I guess you guys can say if you agree or disagree, lay out your solutions, and it's kind of a summary of everything that we've talked about within this chat, and as well as this series of videos that we have covered so far, all of our different episodes. So it will be first laying down. I'm looking at this as moving into it, not as a culture that has already been established, but establishing a culture now. So taking the properties or aspects that one group of people would need to talk about, move forward, build up that culture first, then implement those guidelines for marriages, whether it be arranged or not. Right. So this is what my overall solution would be. Well, first build up that culture, find out what are your ethics, what are your morals, where that group of people as a culture stand, what do you identify, what language you would hold, and how do you define different aspects of that language, right? So come into an agreement with that first. Once that's solidified, then you can look at what the roles are, what overarching roles men and women would play. what levels of equality there are within those different genders. I am one who will stand and say I believe that there's only two genders, which is male and female.
Blasphemy.
Anything else outside of that, hey, I guess it's up for debate with those who want to debate. I'm going to leave that at that. But decide what responsibilities are genuinely taken, and if there's any change, is there room for changing within that? I guess we can see, looking from a biblical perspective, there's ideals of what men are supposed to do and ideals of what women are supposed to do. But we see instances as far as where those things can be kind of swayed away depending on the situation. We've seen a situation where a woman was front and center in battle. Tamar, you will remember her name. I can't. But also we see instances like that whole, Proverbs 31 that allows a woman to kind of go in and pick up the pieces when they do fall, which just shows how great or how in tune a woman has to be to operate within that position. So determining what those factors are will be the first major thing, and building that nucleus as a community first, outside of intimate relationships. So this is just, I'm choosing to say these are factors that I hold. Another person saying I'm choosing to say I want to hold those same factors, and I'm going to bring my family and they're going to bring their families into it. That's how you build the community. Once that community is built, then you can kind of look and say, what are the defining points of arranged marriages? Like how Zeb, you laid two factors, meaning these two people, we can say at their adulthood or that their age of maturity, that they're going to be put together. But I would say take it a step further. And you also laid out, okay, well, we decided this when they were younger and allowed them to kind of grow into knowing each other, and then making that a homestead position. I say even opening up a third avenue, which kind of removes some of the arguments that people have against arranged marriages, which would be allow those two people time to get to know each other, I guess on a deeper level, without there being that we say strong intimate connection. Y'all know what I mean by that. Allowing them to move in that position to decide if that arranged marriage is something that they will want to do. Because like we stated in the beginning of this video, we take the understandings and ideals of others, and we utilize them when we're deciding to be in a relationship or not anyway. So setting aside a portion of time to say, okay, well, my parents along with other elders in the community said you're a right fit for me. Let's go ahead and see if that's the case. And then finding out, using that time period to find out if that's what you want to do, or to build that quote unquote love aspect, and then decide maybe we're better off as friends, where neither party is tainted, and also the relationship between the families still remain the same, because there could be instances where you just naturally don't agree on things. So putting in stipulations that kind of remove those arguments kind of would be a good ideal as well, as far as culturally. But like I said, those ethics and morals and standpoint, religion, language, social gatherings, those things have to already be in effect in order to effectively do that. Which is why I understand how you mentioned the woman that wrote the book saying it can't be done in American society, because those things aren't solidified within cultures in American society. So, people just kind of mix and mingle and go where they feel. And even within those going where they feel, those things to different degrees and different levels, I'm not kicking on no one's culture or nationality, those things aren't always solidified. So solidifying that, allowing room for mental health, allowing room for depression, allowing room to see if that arranged marriage actually works before there is a disastrous event that kind of puts a wedge between the families, would be one necessary addition. I like the aspect of removing, putting emotion second to overall cohesiveness would be kind of my third thing, as far as or we can better say that as leaning on that structure, which I guess for those on this platform would be Torah. So leaning on that Torah base, or whatever that cultural, um, ethical, moral would be, as number one, and then falling on, I guess, emotion as second to that. So this way, that lowers the chance of divorce, because those aren't the people involved in that marriage aren't moving in a sense of, I hate you right now, or I love you right now. Ideal. They're saying, okay, cohesiveness as far as children X, Y, and Z are concerned, this would be the best result to move forward. So these are kind of all of these things that are a culmination of a fact, which is not easy. It's a lot of hard work, but I think those would be the necessary factors, or at least additions to the ideal behind arranged marriages, for those things to take place. And I think I touched on it already, but the ability to say, or the ability to have room to say, I choose not to enter into this arrangement, or the not necessarily disannul a vow because a vow wasn't already made, but to choose not to move that way, based off of certain guidelines. So that culture would set up those guidelines and say, okay, this would be a viable reason why you say it wouldn't work, which has to be a culmination of emotion and practical. So I'm sorry. I'm going to yield on that and allow, you two with much better diction and vocabulary to express our,
Cut it out, brother.
or add to anything. But I'm going to give.
Did you want to go, Zebulon? Okay. Just real quick. I was thinking about again, solutions, and one thing I want to say before I touch on the solutions real quickly is that the love marriage and the arranged marriages, it's not that emotions won't be present. I feel like in any relationship, any household, you're going to have emotions. I think the benefit of the arranged marriage is that the vows overtake emotions. Emotions can exist, but they are sorted out, and they're not the foundation of the house. Is how I personally feel right now. So, because I don't want to make it seem like people can't be in their emotions, or have or be feeling some kind of way, when you marry somebody, you do feel a certain kind of way towards them. I mean, it happens, but it's not the foundation. So the other two things, as far as solutions, I was thinking about, is it possible with the scenario I gave earlier, when I was going to class, and I had, my kids was younger, and then it would be another couple, and their kids would be, have little girls, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's gonna be sister's wife in the future. I think it can exist. But I think too, going back to the close knit community, it has to be something that's gonna keep the families together, let alone anything else. So even so-called Israelites don't necessarily live around each other. They might not go to a class or a camp or anything. So, but I still think it's possible. I think because I'm just forever optimistic about stuff. The other thing too, I wanted to touch on as far as solutions is, as a grown woman now, or let's say somebody's older and they want to participate in arranged marriages. I still even think it's possible for them, and I think that a similar situation, not the same but similar, is that people go on blind dates. I mean, so that's part of American culture that we kind of dibble and dabble in, or if your girlfriend or auntie or whatever is like, oh, I have a nice young man that you should meet. So I had my aunt say it to me when I went back when I went back home. She had a retirement party, and she's like, oh, this guy, this he'll be here. I kind of want y'all to meet. And I was like, I didn't know him, obviously, but she thought so highly of him. So I just think it's possible still. I just think it just takes a certain kind of person who is rooted in the same foundation and who is open to even doing it. But, that's just me. But I think it's possible with the understanding that your word is your bond and things have to be written out. I'm a big proponent of covenants, agreements. So that's all I'll say on that.
No, I mean, can you imagine an Israelite who does not subscribe to covenants?
It's a lot of them. Okay, they still listen. I know
they're
about
out there.
They're there.
Well, no, I'm not saying that they're not out there, but just the thought. I mean, it's like you do understand that being an Israelite is a covenant in itself. you do get that. It's so when people, I completely agree with your sentiment. With everything that both of you said, it leads. It's like it was like a natural progression to what I was gonna bring out, and of course, and anybody who knows me, Facebook and off social media knows that I'm a huge proponent of, and I've been working on the actual putting together of something, and that is I'm a huge proponent of a Beit Din. Beit Din, it's Hebrew and Aramaic for literally it means house of judgment. Beit, house, Din, judgment, and in first century it was referred to as a Sanhedrin.
Okay.
And the reason why these things are necessary is because we can establish a culture. Culture's good. We establish a culture and we're doing all these things, but culture without enforceable order is what you basically get. You end up getting, what is that? Judges chapter 21.
When everybody did what they wanted to do, you talking about them verses?
In those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. And it doesn't mean that everybody did wrong. It just means that everybody did what was right according to their own understanding. And it's interesting that Judges leads up to a certain point. Right after Judges, we enter the time period of what? Samuel. And the introduction of a king.
Right.
The idea of Israel having a king. Now, of course, the first king, Shaul, well, he wasn't the first, Moses was the first king, but, Shaul, the first king of the organized Israelite or whatever, wasn't exactly what the Most High would have wanted, but the concept of there being a king was essential. The Most High wanted a king after his heart. Samuel was a king after the people's heart.
Right.
So he wanted a king that was going to be his representative here.
That's a good point.
That he can go which was David. David became that guy who was like, don't worry about it. I got this. I'm gonna lay it out. Whatever like that. I'm gonna do this. Whatever. So when we live in a time, we're living in a time period in which everybody can do that which is right in their own eyes, we now have scenarios like we have today, where we have to sit and think about arranged marriages and, well, can it work or whatever. You have to have a Beit Din, a Sanhedrin in place of recognized leadership, and in the modern sense, recognized leadership from all of the Torah keeping camps. So there's a representative from IUIC that sits on the board of the Sanhedrin, a representative of GOCC, a representative of Shema Yisrael, a representative of all of these organizations. Every one of them has a prince or a chief or a whatever leader that now sits on the panel, like the Most High told us in the law, setting up judges in all of our gates to render right judgment. So now when you have a Sanhedrin, when you have an actual authoritative body of men and women, some people might have a problem with that, but women who are able to also to sit on that panel and can directly address issues that pertain sometimes specifically to women. that men don't have anything to do with, but are strictly women issues.
Right.
You need that also, that presence there. So when you have an authoritative body, not just some loosely knit leaders all over the place, just kind of doing what they want to do in their own congregation, but an actual authoritative body that says, we are going to take everything that everyone is talking about into consideration. We're going to mull over it, just like if it was the Council of Nicaea. We're going to sit down and we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out, is polygamy admissible in this community? Yes or no? We're going to debate it. We're going to argue it. We're going to discuss it, and we're going to vote on it. And when we vote on it and we come to a conclusion, all camps that are under the umbrella of this Beit Din will have to institute it immediately in their organizations. Now, when you establish something like that, everything that you Tamar, and that you Isaiah spoke about, all of that now plays out much smoothly, because now people are obligated to make these things law. Now you try to correct your mistakes, but now live the way that you know you're supposed to live, and never return back to that nonsense. And that's all you can really do. So I just pray that, I pray that the Most High will be merciful. And as Nehemiah said, I pray that he remembers me for good.
I know, I love that at the end of the book he says that. So as I appreciate that, we're gonna get ready to close out. Good conversation, y'all. Again, learn something new. I had no idea. Next week we'll be back with another topic, and we'll post it soon. Same time, hopefully. I don't know what's gonna go on with the social media, but if we can go live. Oh, well, first of all, we invite y'all to join in. We always have the Zoom link up, so you can always join in. But if not, we'll put it up on our Facebook page. We have a list of videos by topic, and then also on the YouTube page, which is just Love Language, the Roundtable on both platforms. And we hope y'all can share and continue the conversation after we turn the recording off. So anyway, happy Sabbath. Have a good day.
Likewise. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.